Good morning. Convening this hearing on the House Committee on Health and Homelessness. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, 8:30 a.m. We are here in conference room 329 and also via video conference. For those who are on Zoom, I'd like to welcome you to our hearing. Should there be any technical difficulties, please text our technical staff. And should there be any power outages, we will conclude and then I will issue the proper notices to reconvene if needed. For those in the audience, thank you for joining us. We have a very, very busy day today. It is a major filing deadline here in the state legislature, so we will be moving quickly and you will be seeing lots of folks moving all around today. As is my practice in this committee, I defer decision-making until 11:30 a.m., so we will be doing that with this bill. You're welcome to stay through the morning and then come back at 11:30 a.m., but we will be handling decision-making on this measure at 11:30 a.m. So for our audience members and for our committee members, thank you for being here. First up is House Bill 2629 relating to the conveyance tax, which establishes the homeless services funds and begins to set up more stable funding for both homelessness programs and affordable home ownership in our community that are so desperately needed by so many of our folks in our community. Members, first up, we have comments from the Department of Human Services. We have testimony and support from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Wonderful, thank you. Standing on the written testimony from DLNR. Comments from Department of Budget and Finance. Comments from Director Gary Suganuma from the Department of Taxation. Thank you. Testimony in person, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. Okay, thank you. Comments from HFDC. Comments from Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, Mary Alice Evans. Comments, Mr. Wansafi, Hawaii Public Housing Authority.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Standing in testimony from HPHA. Testimony in opposition from Land Use Research Foundation. Testimony in opposition from NIOP, Hawaii Chapter. Testimony in opposition from Hawaii Realtors.
Thank you. We stand on our testimony.
Okay, Hawaii Realtors standing in on their testimony in opposition. Comments, Tax Foundation of Hawaii via Zoom.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the committee. This is Jade McMillan for Tom Yamashita on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on a written comment submitted for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony in support with comments, Catholic Charities Hawaii via Zoom.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair. I'm Betty Lou Larson, representing Catholic Charities Hawaii. We strongly support the intent of this bill. The Rental Housing Trust Fund is the major way that the state is able to produce affordable housing. So we do ask for an amendment to maintain the 50% of the conveyance tax that goes to this fund. We feel now is not the time to cut that funding in half from 50% to 25%. So I appreciate this. We also appreciate removing the caps from both the Land Preservation Fund and Rental Housing Trust Fund so that it can get the full use of the conveyance tax. Homeless services have actually decreased homelessness slightly in Hawaii. These are proven programs that are now need to be funded, not only to reflect the true cost of these programs so that capable case managers and homeless people who have a very difficult job on the streets can be recruited, but also to be maintained. So we support that 10%. We do have concerns about the home ownership fund. We are very supportive of home ownership. We wonder, however, since they have not yet been able, they're in the rulemaking process, so they've not yet been able to work on the $5 million that was allocated last year for this fund. So we feel that maybe there needs to be some more time to evaluate and see what the capacity of this fund is to really utilize these very valuable funds. I know the legislature is working on other parts of the conveyance like infrastructure, which are other critical needs of the state of Hawaii. So thank you very much for listening to our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Support from Kua'aina Ulu Aumo. Testimony in opposition from Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. Testimony in support from Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition, Ted Bolin. We have testimony in person from Blossom Faitera.
Good morning, Representative
come on up, please. Come on up and you can.
No, just I'm standing on my testimony.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Faitara, for joining us, standing in support on her testimony. In person, Ms. Summer Yadao.
I'd like to sound my testimony as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Yadao. Ms. Kenna Stormo Gibson, in person, support.
Yes, strong support for this. I think that this bill.
Come on up to them.
Aloha, Chair and committee. Thank you so much for your time. I just want to say I do think that this bill and the approaches outlined in this bill of a tax on multi-million-dollar homes to fund everything from homeless services to affordable home ownership that stays permanently affordable would be the biggest step in housing policy that Hawaii has made in a while. So if we want to make a difference on this issue, I suggest we move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We have testimony in support from Christopher Youngers. Mr. Youngers stands on his written testimony support. Via Zoom, testimony in support, Kristen Alice.
Hello, my name is Kristen Alice. I live on the Big Island and I work in homeless services for Hope Services Hawaii. This bill would provide a permanent source of funding for homeless services, which, as you know, we have to ask for and advocate for every year. And that makes it nearly impossible to plan for the future. If we really want to continue to offer the services that we provide, this is a way we can do it. Our outreach staff, my colleagues who work in the shelters, they didn't get to be on Zoom during the pandemic. They showed up in person, and this is a way that we can show up for them. So please support this bill. The folks that can afford these homes, they can afford to do something for our neighbors who are unhoused. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us from the Big Island. Wonderful to have you here. We have testimony and support from Renee Rivera via Zoom. And then if there's anyone else to testify on Zoom, please alert our technical assistants. Ms. Rivera? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Renee Rivera. I am recently got housed, and I know that homeless services here on the Big Island and all throughout our state is very important. So I'm in support of this bill. And I just want to let the committee and everyone that homeless services here throughout the state is very vital for people to get back on their feet, out of homelessness and have the continued care that they need, just like me, that got me to where I'm at today. So I want to thank you guys and everybody who's supporting this bill. Aloha.
Do we have any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, any other testifiers in the room? Please come forward and identify yourself, and then we'll open up to questions.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name is Nikki Winter. I'm the former executive director of Achieve Zero, who was a nonprofit providing homeless services. Thank you guys for being here and for hearing my testimony today. So I support this bill because our people are dying on the streets of Hawaii by the hundreds every year. Babies are being born on the streets directly into homelessness. Meanwhile, the state's core homelessness budget is mediocre at best and has failed to fund the true cost of services for decades. Nonprofits are asked to accomplish impossible task of solving the single biggest crisis we're facing as a state while having to fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to keep the doors open and pay for administrative staff. Frontline staff are forced to carry 200 to 250 cases each. And with such a complicated issue as homelessness and all that comes with it, nonprofits are simply set up for failure. Make no mistake that we are at a tipping point and the time for change is now. We must give service providers what they need to move the needle of change, and this bill will help to accomplish that by dedicating a permanent source of funding for homeless services. I support HB 2629 because I want a better Hawaii for all of us, and I believe that this bill can help to start that. I ask that you support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could make sure that you submit your name and for testimony, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Before we open up to questions, we do have late testimony members from a number of organizations and individuals. From Kupono Kaleo o Ka'aina, we have testimony in support. And 3 individuals testifying in support. Members, any questions? All right, I have a question for the Department of Taxation, followed by realtors and possibly Ms. Stormo Gibson, I believe. Yes, okay. For the Department of Taxation. Just to get some clarifying questions, the Fund for Affordable Home Ownership has already been established, correct?
Yes, the fund that it currently goes into is already been established.
Okay, and then how much money is there in that fund?
I don't know how much money there is. I'm not aware of how much money. I think that's more of a budget and finance question.
Okay, do we have anyone from Budget and Finance here? Okay, please take that back to your
Okay, yeah.
sister agency.
Yeah.
Another question I would have is, I believe there may have been already $5 million appropriated. You wouldn't know if it's already been expended, do you?
I don't know.
Okay, can you please take that back
Okay.
also? Let me see what I have questions for you on Department of Taxation. As it's currently established, the distribution from the conveyance tax is 60%, is that correct?
Let me see.
That goes out to other funds.
Yes, yes, yes.
So at the core, what this bill is actually doing is just increasing that current distribution to 70%, is that correct?
50, that seems about right.
Okay, and so the testimony by LERF, which says that this might be possibly unconstitutional, has any of these funds ever been challenged as unconstitutional or unlawful?
I don't believe so, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's fully appropriate for us as policymakers if we determine that affordable home ownership and funding homeless services, which are critical needs in our state, that these would be appropriate funds to establish.
I believe so, but that's probably a better question for the AG's office.
Okay, but there's a
We're just
connection
more
between.
administrative, yeah,
Okay, so none
I
of
mean-
these have been challenged.
correct.
Okay, so an increase from 60 to 70%, any idea of how much that would generate?
Okay, so I don't have the current, so our research office usually does the numbers for this, and I don't have those yet. But the 2022-2023 report, fiscal year 2023, the conveyance tax was almost $55 million. This is according to our annual report to the tax departments.
Okay.
And I mean, I can get those exact numbers to you too, but according to our report that they come out with every year.
Okay, could you supply that to to me, and then I will supply that to the members?
Yes.
And I think what I would like to see from fiscal year 2023, depending on the current way the statute has a distribution, what were the amounts distributed, given in fact, in light of the caps that we do currently have on the distribution?
Okay.
What would have been the distribution had it been with caps and without caps?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that would be helpful. Okay, I believe that's all I have for you. Let me take one last look. Your testimony says that we don't define price-restricted affordability or permanent affordability. You requested definitions for these terms be added. Do you folks have any suggested recommendations for those amendments?
Well, we like it when another department can certify. So, you know, I'm not sure if HHFDC has some sort of deed restriction that we can specifically see, or whether, you know, if someone can just put that word on their deed and therefore have an exemption. We're not
I see
sure.
HHFDC here, so we will pose that question to them.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then you believe that you would need a postponement to January 1st, 2025?
Please, yes.
Yes, understood. Thank you. Members, any questions for DOTAX before we let them go? All right, HHFDC, you're up next. I'm sorry, I know I had set up Ms. Kenna, but HHFDC, please.
Chair, committee members, I'm Craig Hurai, the Executive Assistant at HHFDC.
All right, thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to serve in your capacity for the state and city in so many ways. Wonderful to see you here. So you would actually be the agency most familiar with the AHRF. Can you speak to what's the status of the AHRF? This is the Affordable Homeownership, I guess, revolving fund?
I think we administer that, correct? I haven't, excuse me, I've only been back 2 weeks. But I think that's ours, yeah.
And then there was an appropriation of $5 million to that. How, do you have any idea if there's been money expended for it and what it's been
I'm not
expended
sure if
on?
any money is expended because I think we're doing rules, but I think we have or are doing rules.
Oh, you do have rules.
We either have or will have shortly. I'm pretty sure we've worked on them.
Okay. Can you confirm that and follow up with an email to my office, and I will let
Sure.
the others know. And I will also, I might be able to ask questions of other folks who are more familiar. Again, do you know if any of these funds have been challenged as unconstitutional or somehow not having a nexus to the conveyance taxes? We've long had these
Yeah,
funds,
the
right?
rental housing revolving fund has had a portion of the conveyance tax for maybe a decade or more.
Okay, thank you. Just want to confirm.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Hirai. Members, any other questions for HHFDC? You know, I think Ms. Stormo Gibson, if you can come up, and I know you work more closely with this and probably have some answers regarding this fund. Is AHF established?
The homeownership fund?
Yes, the homeownership
Yes.
fund.
Mhm.
And we did appropriate $5 million to it.
There,
correct?
yes, absolutely.
Are you aware, with your work in the community, if any of those monies have been expended and if rules have been finalized?
I know that, I believe the rules are I thought they were finalized, but maybe there was a couple things left to do. I know that Habitat for Humanity and self-help housing and other very low-cost home ownership options worked really hard on that. And so I believe it's been ready to go, but I don't know if it's been expended yet.
Okay, so you don't know, but that
Yeah.
is who that is supposed to be assisting?
Yes.
Home funds?
Yes, because it could go to affordable housing cooperatives. It could go to a range of things as long as it's for lower income people trying to access home ownership, right? That's how it was designed.
Okay.
And it is, administered by HHFDC, so that's why the bill says since we're already putting money towards affordable housing from the conveyance tax, we've been doing that for a long time, let's have some money go to rentals, but some money go to these affordable homeownership opportunities as well, right? And that's just a best practice we're seeing in cities and counties and places all over the country.
Okay. The way this bill is structured, and I know that there are proponents for this, if we changed the proposed distribution from 25% to Affordable Homeownership Fund to 10%, do you know what that might generate?
I think with the increases we've proposed, right, because we've proposed, so right now the tax maxes out at about 1%, which is very, very low for a conveyance tax when we compare it to other places in our country. And so we've proposed maxing out at 6%, which is what LA started doing. Other places are doing that. So with the higher rates, we're predicting potentially maybe $400 million in revenue. And so 10% of that, or 5% of that, would be 20 million, right? So 20 million would be significant considering it started out with 5. And also noted the reason this is such a powerful funding source is because it adds up over time, right? And so you have it there year after year after year after year. And we have seen that places that really solve their housing crisis, they have funds that build up over time. Yeah.
Okay. And I know that, as one of the proponents of this, if we changed the $2 million to $3 million, what do you know what effect that might have on the revenue
I'd have to
generation?
run some numbers on how many homes are sold in that price point. So that's what we have to see how many homes, what percentage of the market is at that pricing level, right?
Okay.
So it's possible to run those numbers. I wouldn't have it off the top of my head, but maybe, we might look at a decrease of, if the rates were to stay the same, right? We might look at a decrease of instead of 400 million a year, maybe we'd be talking about 350 or something like that, right?
Okay. Based on that,
Yeah.
the numbers generated, how do you think we would be able to tackle affordable home ownership and homelessness services in our state, based on those numbers?
Well, based on those numbers, you know, it would immediately pretty much double the budget for homeless services, right, from what we're doing right now. And then what we've seen, because we went and visited Aspen, that has basically provided affordable housing. 40% of their entire housing stock is affordable for local residents, and they funded it pretty much through a conveyance tax. And what they said is really, you know, it builds up over time, and as private market housing gets more and more expensive, you actually get more and more money into this fund, right? And so it would immediately double it, but then from there, you're actually building up money to keep up with the need. That's the powerful thing.
So this is a game changer.
Yes.
For our local residents.
Absolutely, 100%.
For Alice families.
Yes, 100%.
Working families.
Yep, 100%.
All right, that's what I need to hear. Thank
Yep,
you.
game changer.
Members, any questions? All right, realtors, you're up next. I heard, and I know you're not going to be able to generate this, but I would like to know those numbers if we were to change the price point from 2 million to 3 million. And also to have the price point at 5 million and 10 million.
So you want to know number of sales in last year?
Yeah, and maybe over time. I mean, you guys have the data. You folks know it. I think our families who cannot afford $5 million homes, let alone $27.5 million condos that are being sold in our community, need to see some benefit from the uber rich that are playing in our marketplace. And if this is the tool that we have that has stood up to the test of time, I think we need to look at this. I understand that there is another bill moving related to the conveyance tax, House Bill 2364. It's also being moved, and I know that that's another conversation that you folks are realtors also in opposition to that?
In general, we oppose changes to the conveyance tax for a lot of the reasons that are stated in my testimony, right? Because conveyance tax revenue obviously fluctuates with the housing market, and in general, we just don't like to see anything increasing the cost of housing. Though we do understand and support the merits of what you're trying to accomplish here with providing services for the homeless. We don't oppose that.
Okay. Homelessness and affordable homeownership.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. So we'll look forward to that information to the committee. There's a lot of homework that's been given, so we will ask for that as we proceed with this bill. And the conversation, I think, that's going to happen around the conveyance tax as well as the proposed constitutional amendment that the other committees in our body have been already hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you for testifying. Members, seeing no other questions, again, we will take up decision-making on this measure at 11:30 a.m. We are adjourned. Good morning. Convening this joint committees on the health and homelessness and the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. I would like to welcome Chair Matayoshi and his members to conference room 329. It is 9 o'clock. We are on our 9 o'clock a.m. agenda. Just as a matter of some housekeeping, for those who are present via Zoom, you can contact our technicians if there are any problems with the Zoom. Also, should power go out, we will reconvene, we will adjourn and then reconvene with a notice at the appropriate time. For members both on Zoom and here in person, the practice of this committee and these committees will be to hear the testimony, and because this is a triple filing deadline, to the extent that we have quorum, we will move on this agenda as soon as we are done. It is a busy day, so we welcome everyone to the Capitol for this day. Up on this agenda is House Bill 2415 relating to the nurse licensure compact. There has been a lot of work done on this in the interim as well as from last year. Starting off with testimony, we have testimony in support from the U.S. Department of Defense via Zoom. Ms. Kelly Mae Douglas. And as we're waiting for her, next up we'll have support from Hawaii Department of Labor and Industrial Relations and then the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Why don't we go to to Director and his or his designate, the Hawaii Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Chairs Bilari and Matayoshi, Vice Chairs Take and Uchi, and Garrett, members of the committees, J. Ishibashi, Department of Labor. We stand on our testimony and support.
Thank you. Director, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sana Munoz for the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We stand behind our written testimony in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. In person, we do have Ms. Douglas with us. We'll go to Zoom, the U.S. Department of Defense.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committees. On behalf of the Department of Defense and military families stationed in the Aloha State, I'm here to express strong support for the policy addressed in House Bill 2415, which would allow the governor to enter the state into the multi-state nurse licensure compact. I stand on our written testimony. Just wanted to highlight a couple of points. Since 2017, the Department of Defense, through the Defense State Liaison Office, has prioritized educating states on the benefits of interstate compacts to the military community and assisting them in considering compacts as the optimal solution for addressing licensure portability for military spouses as they move between states. As of today, I believe 41 states have joined the nurse licensure compact, and we do hope that Hawaii will be the 42nd. Thank you so much, and I'm here for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Comments? Excuse me, testimony in support, UH School of Nursing. Good morning,
Good morning, Chair Belati and Matayoshi, Vice Chairs Takenuchi and Garrett. My name is Clementina Seri Ulep, Dean of the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Nancy Atmos Parawal School of Nursing. And we support the intent of this measure and offer comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Comments, Board of Nursing?
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Chelsea Fukunaga on behalf of the Board of Nursing. The board will stand on its written testimony appreciating the intent of this bill, offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii State Center for Nursing, in support.
Good morning. My name is Laura Reichart. I'm the director of the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. The Hawaii State Center for Nursing supports this measure and also recognizes that this is one of many necessary initiatives, including expanding education, supporting recruitment and retention of local nurses, and addressing the overall nursing workforce in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reichart. Testimony in support, Hawaii Pacific Health. Testimony in support, Kaiser Permanente.
Morning, chairs. We'll stand on our
Thank you. Standing in support. HMSA, testimony in support. Thank you. HMSA standing on its testimony. Testimony in support, Queens Health System.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committees. Thanks very much. J.C. Mikey on behalf of Queens. Just want to stand mostly on our written testimony. We support this greatly, and we see this as part of the broader effort to address the shortfalls in our healthcare workforce here in the state of Hawaii. Also just want to thank all of the stakeholders that worked on this issue throughout the interim, particularly Laura and the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. So mahalo.
Thank you. Testimony in opposition via Zoom, Mr. Jeremy Creekmore, Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses. Okay, testimony in support, Hawaii Primary Care Association. Testimony in support, Healthcare Association of Hawaii.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify in strong support of this bill. Hawaii is only one of the 9 states in the nation that have not joined the Multi-State Nursing Licensure Compact. HEH and its members continue to work on multiple initiatives with educational institutions across the state to train and retain nurses. Until we have sufficient nurses in the state, hospitals and other healthcare organizations need as many options as possible to ensure we have sufficient nurses to take care of our patients. The Multi-State Nurse Licensure Compact is one of the options we need. It does provide strong safeguards regarding patient care and nurse disciplinary action. We really appreciate the opportunity to work closely with the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, RICO, the Board of Nursing, and the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Testimony in support, Hawaii Military Affairs Council. Testimony comments, Hawaii Health Systems Corporation. Testimony with comments, Hawaii Association for Justice. Testimony in support, Ohana Pacific Health, Hale Makua Health Services. Testimony in support, Grassroots Institute. Testimony in opposition, Hawaii American Nurses Association via Zoom.
Good morning. Good morning, honorable chairs and vice chairs and committee members. My name is BJ Bartleson. I'm here representing the Hawaii American Nurses Association and 16,000 nurses across Hawaii. And we are in opposition to HB 2415 and the NLC. We stand by our opposition of the NLC based on the in-depth analysis of the NLC outlined in our written testimony. The NLC is not the silver bullet for our workforce shortage. The NLC will only address license portability, and if it came with minimal risks and extreme benefits to our nursing workforce shortage, it would be a viable option. But there's no evidence to suggest that states have greater access to nurses following the NLC membership. Will license portability be immediate with the NLC? Yes, but it will come with high costs and extreme risks to our professional practice and patient safety. Our primary responsibility as nursing professionals is to protect and safeguard the public we serve. The NLC model, unlike the medical licensure compact, will not ensure sufficient protections against the practice of incompetent or unethical nurses. Several specific instances have been well defined by our colleagues at the Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses and can be reviewed in their SB 2492 well-written testimony. Hawaii American Nurses Association suggests a much more rational approach that will not come at the expense of patient safety and quality of care. It will prevent extraordinarily high costs to the state and dismantling of our State Nurse Practice Act, which protects us and the public we serve. Those activities include accelerating the temporary permit process to effectively reduce license portability to 3 days, and ensuring that full staffing necessary to support the work and functions of our licensing of RNs, and also to support functions of DCCA licensing division, Board of Nursing, and RICO. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. We have testimony in support from the Hawaii Association of Health Plans. In person. Kristen Moore provided comments individual, Kate Pyler in opposition, and Catherine Davis in opposition. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to testify? Seeing none, and is there anyone else in the room who would like to testify? Were there any late testimonies submitted? Seeing none. Members, opening up to questions. First, I'll defer to the health members. Chair, to you.
LGO members, any questions? Yeah, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Board of Nursing, please. Hi, thank you for being here. I know you stood on your testimony, but can you just explain to the committees the processes in place for discipline for nurses who may hold a multi-state license?
So they don't hold if you get a compact license and we join, it's more of a privilege to practice within our state. The actual license is with the home state. If a nurse were to commit something, we get a complaint, it would go to our regulated industries complaints office, who would then follow our state procedures to investigate and see if an occurrence happened that violated the Practice Act. And then we would, if they're found guilty, then we would have a settlement agreement or some type of board order.
What is the process in place if there's a nurse who has a primary residence elsewhere?
Sorry?
If there's sorry. What is the process for the Hawaii State Board of Nursing to be notified if there's a complaint about a nurse from a different jurisdiction as their primary residence? How would you folks be notified if there's a complaint or investigation?
This is just for a single state license or for a
Multi-state. Say someone has a primary residence in a different state. They hold this license, this multi-state license. They're being investigated in their home state, away from Hawaii, but they're practicing here, say it's telehealth or whatever. How would you folks be notified?
So all of the compact states are agreeing as part of the agreement for the compact to report to a licensing system. I believe it's nurses. They have another component to it, and all of us have access to that. It would alert us. The only thing is we wouldn't know if the nurse is practicing within the state. That's the only thing we wouldn't know. But we would be alerted if we got a complaint. We could check from there.
Okay, thank you. Chair, may I ask a different question of a different?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Hawaii State Center for Nursing, please. Hi, Laura. Thanks for being here. I think it's been pretty clear in the testimony. Everyone's pretty consistent in saying that this is not a silver bullet. It's not the end-all, be-all, and that we do have projected needs for additional nurses down the road. Do you have any concerns that us entering this compact might actually accelerate the loss of additional nurses who might be looking at other jurisdictions as a lower-cost state?
I think that there is reasonable concern for that, and I think that there's efforts to mitigate that would relate to the nurse staffing environment within each workplace. But essentially, when the Center for Nursing did a survey of about 350 nurses across the state about their interest in the Nurse License Compact, 65% of them responded that they would be interested in getting a multi-state license. And of that 65%, about half indicated they would have interest in taking their nursing services elsewhere, whether it be using it for nursing practice in other states or using it in telehealth, which they may stay here, you could have multiple jobs, using their license to be nurse educators in other states. So there's a number of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that a nurse would leave the state, but there is always that chance that by opening up their eligible job pool to all of the other multi-state licensed states, that it could expedite their exit from this state.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, chairs.
Laura, if you could stay up there for a sec. So, small sample size, obviously, but it sounds like about 30% would be interested in leaving the state.
Yeah.
Half of the 65%. Do we expect the nursing compact to bring in 30+% of our workforce to have a net gain?
I think. Well, I think to leverage the information, nationally, about half as many nurses use the multi-state license compact for any of the scenarios that we had asked about. And I think we can all realize that you may have aspirational goals, and then, we might all dream about, a spendy vacation somewhere, but none of us are really, or few of us are actually going to do that. I think there may be that phenomenon happening. So I don't know if it's realistic that all 30% would actually, click and go. So we may have a smaller number who really does leave. In terms of recruitment into the state, I think I would defer to the any of the employer organizations. From the Nurse License Compact study, what was apparent is that the primary source of recruitment from out of state, or maybe the most successful source of out-of-state recruitment is the use of securing travel nurses and then converting them into long-term positions. But there wasn't a percentage that was provided in that rate, so I wouldn't be able to comment if we would be able to kind of match the loss with entrance to out-of-state nurses.
Okay. And I have another question for you. I kind of was wishing DCCA was going to be here for this or to submit testimony. It sounds like, I'm not against the nursing compact. It does sound like it's treating a symptom and not the disease of the problem, though, which seems to be a lack of local nurses or local residents entering the nursing profession. From talking with people, it seems like licensing is an issue. What kind of changes would you have ideally liked to see to increase nursing licensure here in Hawaii?
Well, if I can comment, absolutely expanding the nursing workforce through the people who are local residents who are interested in nursing is absolutely an option. And we know that we have a lot of qualified applicants applying to all nursing schools. As it relates to DCCA, the SCR 112 study really was resolute in the finding that expedited license processing does aid in recruitment and retention. So if it takes a long time to get a license, that nurse may find a job elsewhere. I can't comment on the individual activities, but there are other initiatives in play. The temporary permit, which was SB 63 last year, that initiative has moved to being addressed through administrative rules, which DCCA may be, or Board of Nursing may be able to comment on. And that and as well as the online license applications are two initiatives in play that we hope have a promise to expediting licenses overall. And with that, if I may, it's important to note that only 30% of the nation's nurses have a multi-state license, and so it's absolutely imperative that DCCA is equipped with all of the resources they need to process licenses for our in-state nurses who would be applying directly for a licensure in Hawaii, as well as the other out-of-state nurses that don't have a multi-state license. So they still would need that single-state license. The multi-state license would not apply to them, and they need that license, that expedited license environment as well.
Okay. Of the nursing students that we graduate every year, how many actually get a license? How many are successful in getting a license?
First-time pass rates are, I believe, above 80%, and then there's second and third and fourth. But I would say I'm not aware of any problems with our local graduates having successfully getting an NCLEX.
I guess I should put it another way. How many potential nurses are we losing through a slower licensing process here in Hawaii?
If they're locally trained nurses, they wait it out. They're educated through their educational systems and their future employers about the timelines that they can expect. From out-of-state nurses, I don't know if there's data that necessarily exists, and I would defer to the employers if they have any of that information.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make sure that the DOD person is there available for questions if she's there, and if anyone from Military Affairs Council is there. Laura, I think there might be more questions, so you can just stay close by.
Yes.
I will defer back to health members. Any other questions?
I have a question. I guess for Board of Nursing or DCCA,
DCCA is not here.
we have this.
Board of Nursing.
We have two organizations, American Nursing Association, Hawaii Association of Professional Nursing opposed. It seems that we're dealing with two or three different kinds of compacts, this nursing license compact, this interstate medical license compact, and then something called multi-state. Is that correct?
So I think the medical compact is for the physicians.
Say again?
For the physicians, that's my understanding. The IMLC, I think that's for physicians. There's just one nursing compact.
So I'm wondering, whether we're dealing with 2 or 3 different compacts or licensing arrangements?
There's a IMLC and our regular single state for the medical, and then there's the NLC for the nursing, and then our single state licensure scheme for that.
Would you agree with the comments by American Nursing Association that this bill poses, quote, safety, unquote, risks, revenue loss, 1.3 million, and, quote, excessive risks?
Like my personal opinion, or do you want the board?
The board.
Your board or your agency?
I think the board acknowledges that there are safeguards provided within the compact language to ensure that if a nurse were to have some type of violation against the Practice Act, we have provisions in place that we could discipline the nurse.
Okay, turning to
Thank you.
questions for labor, and then I'm going to wrap up with questions, and then we'll aim to vote at 9 soon.
Yeah, I know Vice Chair had another question. Did anyone else have another question too? Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Dean Sariula, please. Hi, good morning. I note that you're supporting the intent of the bill, not in full support. And in your testimony, you do point that you do graduate 96 nurses a year through your program, but that there seems to be a concern that this entering this compact is going to, in your words, facilitate the exit of our newly trained nurses from our state. Do you have concerns that this is going to lead to a position where perhaps new graduates of the school do not have jobs waiting for them?
I think that this provides a way for our newly graduated nurses to also leave, as well as enable our local employers to hire nurses from outside of the state. Mm-hmm.
But how do you feel about that? I mean, as the dean of this nursing school, are you just happy that graduates have good jobs perhaps elsewhere, or would you prefer them to stay here? And
I definitely would want them to stay here. I mean, we pay the taxes to educate our students at the School of Nursing at UH Manoa, so the residents of Hawaii deserves the care of our graduates and not elsewhere.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean.
Thank you.
I look forward to the nursing surplus.
Yeah, me too. My husband does too.
Go ahead, Chair.
Go ahead. You have a question?
We're done.
Okay, I have a number of questions, so seeing no other questions, can I first have up the Department of Defense, since you are testifying from afar?
Hi, yes. Thank you,
Is
Chair.
there any data that you have nationally amongst your military spouses and employees who might benefit from the this nurse licensure compact? Because we have worked diligently in this committee to ensure that that pathway is open, because we understand that many military spouses want to come here and then they have the qualifications, and then because of our licensing problems, they stall out. So we have people here who could help address the nursing shortage. Is there any data about that nationally? And then you can drill down then to Hawaii.
Sure, yes. I know we have that data, Chair Bellotti. I don't have it offhand, so can I provide that to you following this hearing?
Absolutely. I think that would be helpful and insightful. And if this bill moves forward, the next committee will be the Commerce and Protection Committee. If we can drill it down for especially the Western region and Hawaii, because I know, I mean, that is a critical potential supply of workforce that's untapped. We've tried to work for that in the area of teachers and nurses and medical professionals, and it would be hugely helpful, especially for, we know that our military spouses and families want to contribute to the community. So they can definitely do that. Thank you for responding to that.
You're welcome.
Question for Queens. So I noticed in your testimony, and I think this might address some of the questions coming from Vice Chair of LGO. In your testimony, it says that the ICNLC adopted a new rule effective as of January 2nd, 2024, such that a multi-state licensee who changes primary state residence to another party shall apply for a multi-state license in the new party state within 60 days. How is that a protective measure, and also does it does it alleviate some of the concerns, right, of people kind of evading the enforcement procedures that have been adopted by the ICNLC?
Yeah, I think you've keyed in on an important point and one that has come up. That's one provision that they recently made that would allow for the reporting so we would know who's in state practicing. I think the other component of this that's important is what's in the bill, which would put a requirement on employers as well to report to the state who we are hiring that has a multi-state licensure compact. So I think both of those pieces put together provide us some of those protections so we know what the workforce looks like here in the state.
Okay. Can you speak to, this hopefully will move forward, but can you speak to some of the fees and the fee structures that we could look at as this bill keeps moving through the legislature?
Sure. I mean, I'll defer a little bit to Board of Nursing and DCCA on the licensing aspect of that. But I think, it's important to think about any kind of shortfall that's in place that other states have also faced going through this process. That's been addressed through a modest fee increase, so you can recoup some of that loss. So I think that's critical to think about. If there are other ways to offset those costs that fall on the employers or other, formulas that could be beneficial, we're open to thinking about those. But I think it's important to look at the other 41 states and territories who have not faced the shortfalls and have done other things through fees to make those offsets.
Okay, thank you. A question either for Ms. Reichart or Dean, if she's still here? Okay, Dean. I really appreciate, you can come up, Dean. I really, really appreciate that, we have to hit this with all different kinds of solutions. And one of the questions I heard from LGO was the question about, are we putting out enough of our own graduates? So we have 90 nurses a year graduate. How many applicants do we have every year?
We have quite a few.
Can you say how many?
So like last year, we had a total of 719 applicants.
How many?
719 applicants.
1,700? 700.
719, I'm sorry.
719.
Yeah. And of that, and so we have several pathways. The direct entry in nursing, it's about maybe the admission rate there is like 10%, 10.5%. So we admit them directly from high school. So from there, we admit about 24. And for our traditional, getting their prerequisite year done first, then applying to our program, we admit about 12% of those applicants.
Of the 719 applicants, how many were admitted of the 719?
So 48 times 2, so 76, 96.
76.
How many?
48 times 2, yeah. 48 from our undergraduate program and 48 from our graduate entry program in nursing. So the graduate entry program in nursing is a program where they have a baccalaureate in another field and enter nursing to receive training in a year, what normally our undergraduate program delivers in 3 years.
Okay, I guess, so let me ask the question in a simpler way. Of the 719 applicants that you had, what was the aggregate number admitted?
So altogether, we had 48 for the undergrad and 48 for the graduate entry program in nursing.
So only a total of 97.
96.
So we had 97 admitted, but we have over 719 applying. Do you know what the admission rates are at the other nursing schools? And are there other ways that maybe we might encourage you folks to either open up more nursing spots? Because there is clearly a demand here. 719, and we only have 97 being admitted?
You're correct. So the problem, and I think we've said this in many forums, is the nursing faculty shortage, but more the lack of clinical placement. So during the pandemic, because of the challenges by our local entities, they limited the number of students going into the hospitals. So prior to COVID, maybe about 8 per section of a clinical would go on the unit. But post COVID, it ranged between 4 to 6 only.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to clarify. So 97 applicants get in, 719 are applying. Is it because you don't have enough faculty to teach, or is it because I think I'm hearing some suggestions and chattering that maybe the 719 are not qualified?
They're very, they're not.
Okay.
Our admission rate, GPA is like 3.0. Of course, we look at other things, but I would say sometimes our average GPA is that we admit is like 3.75. So there are applicants that are being turned away, even with high GPA, because of lack of clinical placement.
Clinical placement and nursing staffing.
Faculty.
Okay, so that's perhaps another thing that we need to look at for funding purposes.
Right.
Okay, I know we have to vote. I have one last question, and I think that we're going to have more opportunity to have a further discussion about this. Mr. Rathel. Okay, go ahead. We'll let Martin.
I'm sorry, one more question for you, H. Just to clarify, do you limit your admissions based on the clinical placements that you have for those students? That's how you decide what size class you'll admit? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Rathel, this is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic since the pandemic. We've seen nurses come in through expedited pathways. We've seen a number of nurses come in with probably the multi-state nursing license, multi-state license. Was the experience of the hospitals during the pandemic that the hospitals could work with these nurses, that they were qualified, and that you could capture when there was wrongdoing or problems to address some of these concerns raised about multi-state licensed nurses, like moving through the communities of the entire nation and somehow causing harm?
There are multiple safeguards in place for hiring nurses. The DCCA is responsible for ensuring appropriate licensure and having what they call an unencumbered license. There's not there's not something that that nurse may have done elsewhere. Our employers, every one of them, also, as they do with any employee, puts them through a recruitment and vetting process. They do their own background checks. And so it's not just the DCCA and the Board of Nursing that are vetting these nurses. Our employers are absolutely committed to providing the best possible care in all of our institutions, whether it's hospitals, long-term care, home care, hospice. We do not want we want the best possible care for our patients. It's not hiring anyone who's available. So every single individual every single nurse who is hired is thoroughly vetted by their employer, in addition to all the work done by the DCCCA and the Board of Nursing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Rathel? Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to recess for DM, and we'll hopefully come back really shortly. So recess. Reconvening our 9 a.m. agenda for health and LGO. Welcome back. Chair's recommend, after great discussion, good questions, continued conversation that I'm looking forward to. Chair's recommendation for health is to pass out an HD1 to House Bill 2415, adopting the amendments from the Hawaii State Center for Nursing at pages 41 and 46, also defecting the date to 3000. And any technical amendments for consistency, clarity, and style identified by our HMSO staff. Members, any questions from the health? Members, any questions from LGO?
Any comments, members? Nope, seeing none.
All right, Vice Chair for the vote for health.
Health Committee voting on HB 2415. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato? Aye. Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi?
Aye.
Representative Martin? Aye. Representative Nishimoto? Representative Garcia is excused. Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chair?
Committee on Labor and Government Operations, same recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. House LGO committee members, voting on House Bill 2415, recommendation is to also pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella is excused. Representative Martinez, also excused. Representative Sayama? Aye. Representative Tam?
Aye.
Representative Alcos?
Aye.
Thank you, members. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Have a wonderful, happy Good morning. Convening our Committee on Health and Homelessness. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, 9:45 a.m. Members, welcome to our busy triple referral deadline day. This is our third hearing of the morning. To those of you who are on Zoom participating, should there be any problems, please contact our tech staff. And should there be any power outage or any glitch, we will adjourn and then properly notice a meeting if needed. For those in our conference room 329, the preference of this committee or the protocol of this committee is to have decision-making at 11:30 a.m. So we will be moving for decision-making. You're welcome to stay to listen to the decisions, but we will be convening decision-making on this agenda at 11:30 a.m. So starting up first, we have House Bill 966 relating to access for treatment for terminally ill patients. We have in-person, in support or comments, Ms. Karisu. From HMSA. We also have late testimony from Department of Health.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Lauren Kim, Policy and Planning Chief for DOH. We've submitted comments of a technical nature requesting that amendments not be made to Chapter 321, which is the substantive Department of Health statute, and rather perhaps in the neighborhood of 327, which are health-adjacent chapters, but not necessarily the regulatory or operational requirements for the Department of Health. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any other testifiers via Zoom? Any testifiers in the room? Seeing none, members' questions? Seeing none, moving on to House Bill 2149 relating to the death care industry. We have testimony in person in opposition from DCCA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Chelsea Fukunaga on behalf of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. The department will stand on its written testimony in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony, comments, Department of Budget and Finance. We have via Zoom, Deputy of the Attorney General. Comments? I'm present. Oh, thank you.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. We submitted comments basically noting that the substantive provisions of the bill are in a DOH chapter, but the board that's going to enforce those provisions is being placed within DCCA. So just for regulatory clarity, we think those two should be together. Available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Testimony in opposition, Hawaii Funeral and Cemetery Association, Jay Morford via Zoom.
Good morning, Chair and committee. Thank you for the time this morning. My name is Jay Morford. I represent the Hawaii Funeral and Cemetery Association, and we stand on our testimony in opposition on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mililani Memorial Park in opposition, Eden Buffington. Comments, NE Regulatory Research Center via Zoom, Connor Norris.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to testify on HB 2149 today. I just wanted to echo my written testimony that licensing is not always the appropriate form of regulation. And when Colorado removed licensing requirements for funeral directors, the prices that consumers paid fell, and there was no evidence of harm from unlicensed funeral professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members? I'm sorry, we received testimony from Dodo Mortuary Inc., Mitchell Dodo. In opposition. Any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, any other testifiers in the room? Members, any questions? Quick question to Attorney General.
Yes.
So are you suggesting from your testimony that if this were to move forward, the board should be with DOH?
I think depends on you folks' intent. It could be either way. They just need to be together, I think, for clarity.
Oh, so move the DOH licensing statutes potentially to DCCA.
Or vice versa.
Vice versa. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none. Members, moving to House Bill 1963, Certificate of Need relating to healthcare. We have up first Mr. Lewin in opposition from the State Health Planning and Development Agency.
Aloha, Chair Belatti and Vice Chair Takanuchi, Representatives Amato, Kobayashi, and Martin. SHPTA, being a regulatory agency, obviously isn't always going to be endearing to all the regulated, but we know there's a value. We've stated in our testimony the value of CON. It decreases cost and frivolous investment, and it's contingent. Actually, the CON is still present in 35 states, even though the feds withdrew their funding for it. That came back out in the early years was all federally funded. All 50 states had a CON process, but now states have retained it. DC has retained it, but states vary in terms of their performance, and we think we do an excellent job. I just want to mention that. If you look at the staff of SHPTA, actually 3 FTEs is what it takes to actually manage this program. So it's very low cost. The turnaround time for the filing processes is less than 2 weeks, and the actual adjudication is almost always less than a month. So I just want to bring that up in the beginning. For 1963, it's eliminating CON requirements for substance abuse services, psych beds, hospice services, dialysis, and exempting the increase in inpatient beds for a hospital from 10% to 30% of the total licensed beds. Those are the 4 features. Number 1, substance abuse, we don't require a CON for only a small sliver of substance abuse services. It's those that have social, emotional, disturbed people, either mentally ill or developmentally disabled, and also need substance abuse treatment. Most of those services are provided well by DOH, and we think that they can be exempted from that because we work closely with them. They do a high-quality service. We'd like to keep the CON requirement for private companies that come in, just to make sure that vet them to know that they're competent. In terms of the psych beds, again, there are emergency procedures if there's a real need for psych beds, but we can expedite this process and do. We're aware of the hard work that DOH does in their part here. But there are private hospitals with psych beds, and there are private companies that can come in and do investment psych facilities. So we'd like to retain the CON for that purpose, but we're expediting work with DOH when they need it. For hospices, again, there's a value in public notice. Hospices, the DOJ is now investigating hospices in 4 Western states for fraud. There's a big, massive scandal about private investor-owned hospices. We don't have that kind of service here. But anyway, we don't want to have it here. And then dialysis, Medicare is a reviewer of dialysis services. You could think maybe we could relax that. But I think we need more dialysis facilities. But there are some services that are provided from some places in the country that are not high quality. So we think the CON adds merit, mainly because there's public notice, everybody knows what's happening and has a chance to comment, and we expedite the process of review. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin. Comments, Hawaii Pacific Health? Comments, Queens Health System? In opposition, Kauai Hospice, Inc. In opposition, Healthcare Association of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee, for allowing us to testify in opposition to this measure as written. I will say that coming from an association that represents the regulated industries, we are very supportive of the Certificate of Need process, and we would echo Dr. Lewin's statements that it is, in fact, a very efficient process. It is not one that we receive feedback from our members that needs any major improvement, and I can tell you that our members do often give us feedback on areas where agencies could potentially improve some of their processes. I really want to emphasize that we believe that the exemption for hospice should not go through. As Dr. Lewin indicated, we do not have the type of predatory hospice agencies that you see on the mainland, and we would like to keep it that way. So we would request that this committee remove the exemption from the CON process for our hospices from this measure, and that is why we are opposing it today. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony in opposition from Kokua Mau. Support Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. Opposition Hawaii Care Choices. Comments U.S. Renal Care. In opposition from Ms. Marilyn A. Matsunaga via Zoom. Okay, while we're waiting for, I'll just read out the others. We also had testimony and support from Leon Wilmot, Warren Collins, in opposition from Dr. Fishberg, and in opposition from Dr. Dueck. If Ms. Matsunaga is on, if she can unmute. And while we're waiting, was there any late testimony? No late testimony? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Any other testifiers in the room? Members, questions? Okay, I have a question. Dr. Lewin. So 18 years ago, when I was first elected and I was sitting on Health and Human Services and a CON bill came in, it was like the third rail, that we should never touch it. And so we haven't, I don't think, have touched the CON process, but after 18 years and looking at what the CON process is, I think this is something that we need to look at because maybe there are parts of it that are over-regulatory. And I guess some of the questions I have, and the reason why I think this bill is important to move forward is that our own Department of Health was subject to the Certificate of Need process for the Ivole Resource Center for crisis stabilization beds we need desperately in the community. We had to go through the CON process twice when we all know, without any analysis, that we need stabilization beds and crisis centers. So, with that knowledge, is the amendment with respect to substance abuse facilities? You have offered that in the rules, there is some language in there that we could use. What is that language specifically that we could introduce here, as well as whether or not a CON process for residential special treatment facilities is also unnecessary? Can you comment on those questions?
We thought that the DOH, we work closely with them. These are very specialized patients in a very narrow section of substance abuse treatment. We don't do CONs for most substance abuse treatment at all. Only for this very narrow group of people with mental illness, developmental disabilities who also have substance abuse problems. In that area, we're recommending exempting the Department of Health, but asking that we retain the CON for new entries into the market from private sector.
Okay, so can you explain what was the language that required Department of Health to go to the CON process 2 times? So if it's not substance abuse facilities, what is the language we need?
Let me ask, maybe Daryl Shutter, who is our legal person who runs the program, maybe you can comment.
Can you come forward? Again, this is not,
Yeah, it's historic.
I'm not speaking a falseness. The Department of Health was required to go through the CON process twice for a facility that we all know we need.
Yeah, so we have a list in our rules of services that require a certificate of need. So one of the things on the list are special treatment facilities, which that facility fell under. So, we have no choice. If it's a special treatment, if it's licensed as a special treatment facility, then it needs a certificate of need first. So if it's on the list, we have to
Okay,
require.
maybe the way to approach this then is, can you provide this committee with the list? Because perhaps that list is far too broad.
Yes.
And we need to put these into
Yeah,
exemptions.
the list is actually in the Hawaii Administrative Rules. It's 11-186-5.
I appreciate the reference, but please provide it to me because right now we're like overwhelmed. And so if you provide that to us, that will help us further fix this bill, because I agree, the certificate of need process is important.
Yeah.
But it's really like, again, to hear that the Department of Health was subject by another state agency to go through months, weeks of I don't know what, when we know we need these facilities, is mind-boggling to me. So please help us help you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
I believe Ms. Matsunaga is on Zoom, so we'll go to her and then we'll open any questions. Ms. Matsunaga. Thank you for joining
thank you.
us.
And apologies for my technical difficulties. I'd also like to apologize for my late testimony yesterday. I spent, I think it was about 10 minutes over time because I had to find my password. As Dr. Lewin has stated, SHPTA and the Certificate of Need program is very important because of its public notice feature. It provides transparency to the public on vital healthcare services and facilities that are being proposed for their neighborhoods. That is the only place that the public has notice and has the ability to ask questions of providers. Going to the earlier comments about the special treatment facility, it's why SHPTA is administratively attached to the DOH, because there are times when the department as a provider does have applications that appear before the agency. So I stand in strong opposition to this bill, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can stay on the line or stay on Zoom. There might be further questions. Members, any other questions? I have questions for Ms. Heckathorn or maybe some of the hospitals for HAH. Okay, part of this bill touches bed changes that involve 10 up to 30% or 10 beds of existing licensed bed types, whichever is less of a facility's total existing licensed beds within a 2-year period. So this is the part of the bill that touches on our larger acute care hospitals the most, I think. Can you speak to why 10 up to 30% or 10 beds is significant, and maybe those numbers can actually be tweaked? Because if we're talking about smaller facilities that don't, I think the CON process for the large facilities critically important. We need that. But what is it about these numbers that we can adjust to make the CON process work for us better?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think, this was not something that we had requested as part of this measure. Our facilities do have some flexibility to change the types of beds that they have. I mean, the bed itself doesn't change, but the use of the bed might change in a hospital. I believe that the intention of changing that particular percentage is to allow, especially in times of emergency, for us not to have to go to Department of Health to have those beds changed, right, and put any barriers in place. I will say that during the pandemic in particular, we worked closely with SHPTA and the licensing division, and I do not recall any issues with being able to redesignate beds. I think if we had to have a larger conversation about what numbers specifically were in the bill and getting feedback from our smaller members about how that change might affect their operations, I need to check with them and be able to come back to the committee and provide more detailed information.
Okay, I think if this bill moves forward, which I'm going to advance it, I think we need to understand that clause better.
Okay.
Because again, I do think it's important for the larger hospitals, like that's where we need to have a better and ensure the transparency process. Yeah. But it's for the smaller facilities that we may need more of, and I don't know. So if you can further inform and educate committee members as this bill continues to move, that would be a very important contribution for this committee and for the community.
We'll do so. We'll get that information to you quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, moving on to House Bill 2775 relating to healthcare. This is relating to a candor process. We have comments from Healthcare Association of Hawaii. Okay, we have testimony and support from John Van Diaz. We have late testimony from Ania Hazem in support. Any other testifiers via Zoom? Oh, Ms. Matsunaga, thank you for joining us. We're done with this, and we will be convening decision-making at 11:30 a.m. So if you are done, you don't need to stay on. Testimony, any late testimony in person? Seeing none. Members, any questions? All right, moving on to House Bill 2275 relating to home health agencies. Members, we have testimony with comments from Department of Health.
Good morning, committee and chair. My name is Gina Turner. I'm with Office of Healthcare Assurance. I'm the chief's officer right now, transition and an RN. Hi.
Standing on your comments?
Okay. So this is in regards to complaints and for home health agencies. I just want to point out that for home health agencies, there is a difference between the complaints and our recertification surveys. And this is emphasizing on complaints. So all our complaints come into our facility, to our office, and is documented into our national database, which is linked to the federal regulations. So, let's see. The complaints are determined for investigation 99% of the time with the federal regulation versus the state regulations. So we basically go out and, because it's a stringent regulations. OCA maintains a federal database for all complaints, intakes, and maintains another database for the state would require manpower and possibly full-time employee or IT specialist, et cetera. Complaints for home health agencies to establish and maintain. So the complaint reports and the recertifications I stated was different. Recertification is a report that would pick up all the complaints, and we go out every 3 years, and if we get complaints, we go out as needed. Each complaint that would come in would be triaged, and we would go out according to the federal criteria and based on what the need is for investigation. Not all complaints are investigated. It has to meet criteria. Looking at the state statutes, there are no criteria or triage or ways to differentiate investigations. So I also wanted to point out that the complaints are usually requested by anonymous people that call in, and so it is our job to maintain HIPAA law and, assure their privacy in any complaints that come in, and so therefore it's not made public. But when we do our certifications, we do look back on events, which would be complaints that happen, and they are covered in that report. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. This was your first time with testimony in front of a committee. Not scary, right? Great. Very good. Thank you very much. We have testimony in person comments from Healthcare Association of Hawaii.
If I can request also getting a compliment at the end of my testimony. Thank you, Rep. I just really do want to thank OCA for their comments. I do want to note that as the Healthcare Association of Hawaii, we represent only the Medicare certified home health agencies. And so those are the agencies that our friends at OCA were discussing where we have a lot of federal requirements around our work. There's also a public website, Home Health Compare, where any families can go online and check on the quality on certain key metrics. I do want to note that wasn't noted in the OCA testimony, that there are home care agencies, and that's something we're talking about a lot more as an association, that there are differences in terms of home health and home care, and I just want to make sure that I raise the fact that home health, which are our members, really provide that clinical care. You're discharged from a hospital, a nursing home, you need rehab, wound services, and that home health, or home care, is that more personal care services. So we just want to make sure that that's very clear and really appreciate OCA's work on helping us with our members on the Medicare certification process. So thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate your testimony too. Any other testifiers via Zoom? Any other testifiers in the room? No late testimony. Members, any questions?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
For Paige. I just want to ask, so you're talking about PA1 versus PA2, correct? For home health versus personal care?
I think, and this is where my knowledge probably isn't as broad as it should be because we don't represent the home and community-based services. I believe you're correct. Let me make sure that is the case, but I believe that PA1 and PA2 are the different levels in the home care services, which would be different from our home health services. But let me make sure that's the case and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, members, moving on to House Bill 1921, end of our agenda. I'm amazed we're at the end of our agenda. We have testimony and support with comments. This is relating to mobile vaccinations. Support with comments from the Department of Health.
Thank you, Chair Bellotti, and also Vice Chair Takenuchi and honorable members of the committee. My name is Ron Balahadia. I'm the Immunization Branch Chief at the Department of Health, representing the department at this time. So the Department of Health supports this measure, offering comments and proposed amendments. The Disease Outbreak Control Division, DOC-D, provides the following testimony. DOC-D has historically provided direct vaccine services only in vaccine-preventable disease outbreaks such as COVID-19, Mpox, hepatitis A, and other outbreaks that have occurred, or in exercising emergency preparedness for outbreaks such as the Stop Flu at School program. DOC-D provides a safety net in times of outbreak and would encourage direct services in a similar philosophy. DOC-D is currently not funded or structured to provide direct vaccination services. What we would request is that a coordinator position will be required to oversee the direct services contract and then also encourage vaccination amongst non-government providers before deploying DOC-D's direct services contract. DOC-D would encourage broadening the scope of services outside homebound to other vulnerable populations to ensure a wider safety net that could be leveraged based on evolving public health needs and priorities. Thank you for this time to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony and support, Executive Office on Aging. Testimony and support, HMSA. Thank you. Testimony and support, Beverly Wong, individual. Testimony and support, Michael Older, individual. Any late testimony? Any testimony via Zoom? Any testimony in the room? Seeing none. Members, any questions? I have a question for Department of Health. So I just want to make sure that the coordinator position is this one state position program specialist for of 122,000?
Yes, that is correct.
Approximately? And then the contract would be for 1.35 million?
Yes, and that would be inclusive of a medical director and nurses to be able to vaccinate, and then also a social work admin individual to be able to help out in ensuring that the homebound patients that we're working with, they're addressing their needs also. So the contract would encompass those positions in there.
Okay, and then just as a follow-up, I mean, I think this is a really good outgrowth from the pandemic and a
Yes.
lesson learned that we should adopt.
Definitely.
So we did do these through mobile
So
services.
Exactly, and we worked and coordinated with community-based organizations, hospital systems, and also pharmacies to be able to get out to these community members. FEMA actually paid for a majority of those that effort, and so it was definitely an effort to get, and that's how come Hawaii, for the first and second doses of COVID, really were high up in comparison to the rest of the nation. And that was, again, the efforts of going to our most vulnerable populations and getting them vaccinated.
So this is the populations of like the nursing homes.
So we would work through those individual, if there's existing programs already attending to individuals, we would go ahead and coordinate with them. For those individuals that don't have any or access to that, we would then take on that via this contract to be able to kind of be that stopgap safety net.
And then just one last question. So this is proof of concept. We've already done it.
Definitely.
This is a program that works. It increases vaccination rates, protects kapuna, who are largely the homebound.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Questions?
So I appreciate your suggestion that it apply to more than just homebound to take advantage of the program. I assume for like homeless individuals
Yes.
or other things like that.
Yes.
Did you have suggested language to change that so that it can be, it can
Include that?
have the, not just for other specific groups, but it can have all the flexibility needed?
Okay. We will definitely try to make sure that that is incorporated, I think. Is it there?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If you could share that with our chair.
Yes.
That would be excellent. Thank you. Representative.
I would second that.
Okay.
Not just homebound, but vulnerable populations.
Okay, let's see. Maybe we could just to facilitate it, it's in their testimony. But we will also ask the DOH maybe provide us with some more clarifying language. Thank you.
Or delete.
Members, that is, of course, legislating in action when we can do it at the table. Any other testifiers seeing none? Any other questions? Seeing none, we will recess until 11:34 decision-making. Recess. Opening our 11:15 a.m. decision-making agenda, members for the Committee on Health and Homelessness. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, for the 11:15 a.m. agenda in conference room 329. Members, we're going to just recess, and then we'll open shortly. Just have to confer on a number of matters. Recess. Good morning. Reconvening our 11:15 a.m. decision-making agenda. Members, we have a number of bills. First up is House Bill 1830. This is one of our majority package bills. Chair's recommendation is to pass an HD1 that addresses and adopts amendments addressing DCCA's comments, deleting the sections requested by NASW and HIAFMT to delete the testing while they sit for provisional licensure, inserting a defective date of 3,000, as well as inserting into the committee report the position amounts of 73,406 in DCCA's testimony for the FTE position, and $75,000 into the committee report for the request for the databases. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns?
What was the dollar amount?
It's going to be in the committee report, but it was, I believe, 73,406 for the FTE and 75,000 for the internal databases.
Thank you.
And a defective date of 3,000. Okay. Members, any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1830, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato?
Aye.
Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi?
Aye.
Representative Martin?
Aye.
Representative Nishimoto?
Aye.
Representative Garcia?
Aye.
Chair, recommendations adopted.
Members, the next couple of bills all reflect adult mental health bills we were working on last session. So I'm going to be moving a series of them as well as deferring a series of them. First up, House Bill 1831, again, is the majority package bill for funding of crisis intervention behavioral health center systems. We're going to blank out the amounts requested, put it into the committee report. We are also going to move from 2698, a version of the definition for behavioral health crisis centers, making it authorizing and not making it mandatory that the director may establish or contract with behavioral health crisis centers in each county. And then, members, any technical amendments for consistency, clarity, and style, and a defective date of 3,000. Members, any questions?
This combines with the next two bills?
Yes. In part because we need the definition of behavioral health centers, crisis centers. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1831, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members for this bill and for the rest of the agenda unless otherwise noted. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, based on that, members, House Bill 2698 is deferred. Moving on to House Bill 2451. Members, this relates to telehealth. And this is both an administration bill and there's a telehealth amendment in House Bill 2628. So what we're going to do is we're going to move parts of the telehealth provision from 2628 into 2451. We're going to add any tech amendments. We're also going to, let's see. Insert a defective date. And I believe there are provisions from the judiciary's testimony from House Bill 2628 that represents what will be needed for some staffing positions for telehealth. And we're going to move that into House Bill 2451. So adding appropriation clauses pursuant to the judiciary's request to make this telehealth process work more smoothly. And then, of course, a defective date and technical amendments for clarity, style, and consistency. Members, any questions? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2451, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendations adopted.
Members, moving on to 2159. Members, this is going to be the vehicle for our ACT Mental Health Code amendments. So Chair's recommendation is going to be to move this out, continuing to require the AG to assist with the preparation and filing of petitions, adding the mechanism for automatic screening of certain nonviolent defendants for involuntary hospitalization, or ACT, from 2628, authorizing courts to require certain probation violators to undergo mental health evaluations from 2628, and then moving also provisions relating to the repeal of paragraphs 3 of section 802-1A from House Bill 2521. So this is going to be the vehicle, members, that has all of our kind of mental health amendments. 2159. Any technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style? And a defective date of 3,000. Members, any questions? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 2159, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, members, based on that, House Bill 2628 is going to be deferred. House Bill 2521 is going to be deferred. Members, I'm going to defer House Bill 2800 relating to mental health, the convening of a mental health code review every 10 years until next Wednesday, February 14, 2024 till 11:30 a.m. There are conversations ongoing now with the Attorney General's office for this, as well as the Department of Health. So members, I think this is going to be a very good bill to move forward, and we'll set that for DM until Wednesday of next week. Members, moving to House Bill 1954, this is the Community Outreach Court. Chair's recommendation is to take the recommendations of the judiciary, any technical amendments for the consistency, clarity, and style, defective date of 3,000, move any appropriation amounts into the committee report and blank those out. Members, comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1954, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair recommendations is adopted.
Members, we are adjourned on our 11:15 a.m. agenda. Opening up on our 11:30 a.m. agenda relating to tobacco products, House Bill 1778. Members, I want to thank the committee for the good comments and questions that we had. I also want to thank all of the participants who came forward and provided testimony. I also want to note that following this hearing, there were a number of bills relating to tobacco flavor bans, and we did receive testimony in support from Chair Tommy Waters to hear the city and county bill for House Bill 1854, which has many of the same measures but was not heard. So I did want to acknowledge that, there were county representatives urging us to move on this bill. So on that note, members, I'm going to be moving forward House Bill 1778 with a proposed HD1, striking out the state flavor ban, recognizing that the counties of Hawaii Island and the city and county of Honolulu have, in their wisdom already having engaged with community members in their community, passed these laws that actually would impose flavor bans. And so respecting the counties, and home rule and all of that, we will be moving forward a bill that includes amending language to the county preemption that states the taxation of cigarettes, tobacco products, and electronic smoking devices are a statewide concern. It is the intent of the legislature to regulate the taxation, not the sale of cigarettes. There will be amending language, members, to ensure that nothing in this chapter shall be construed to limit a county's authority to enact ordinances that regulate the sale of cigarettes, tobacco product, to enact ordinances that regulate the sale of cigarettes, tobacco products, and electronic smoking devices within the county in accordance with sections 328J-15, provided that the counties will not be able to enact fees or taxes with respect to tobacco products. That will be reflected in the amending language, members, as well as a defective date of July of 3,000. Members, any comments or questions?
Question, Chair.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you're removing the flavored ban, and the bill is just a tax bill now?
No, it's not a tax bill. It actually says that we will allow the counties to enact laws that regulate the sales, but that the taxation essentially remains with the state.
So the flavor ban is gone from the bill?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it will allow, yes.
Thank you.
A statewide flavor ban.
I would support a flavor ban. We can do it both on the state level and the county level.
I respect that position, Chair, or Representative. So this amends the preemption clause and essentially allows the counties to move forward with their county bans if they choose to do so. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Noting questions and the concerns, this has a long way to go, members. Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1778, Chair's recommendations passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Reservations for Representative Amato
Reservations.
and Kobayashi, reservations. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Wonderful. Okay, members, based on that, House Bill 1563, we're going to defer that measure. Moving to House Bill 2806, Chair's recommendation is to insert a defective date and to note that the FTEs to be funded will be from the special fund that has been created. Any technical amendments for consistency, clarity, or style? Members, any questions on this? I will also note, members, on the day that we heard this, the Attorney General announced through a press release another receipt of over $1 million in another opioid settlement. So money is coming into the state via these opioid settlement monies, and we really need to make sure that this is going towards treatment and substance abuse disorder prevention. Members, just wanted to note that for you folks. Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 2806, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair, recommendations adopted.
Members, House Bill 2253, this is another opioid bill. Members, Chair's recommendation is to pass an HG1 that makes the program voluntary, authorizes payment from county funds or funds that the counties receive from their portion of opioid settlement monies. Members, pursuant to the agreement, the master agreements, all counties do receive a portion of those opioid funds, so that could be used to fund this what could be perceived as a mandate. We're going to defect the date to 3,000, as well as change the reference to naloxone to opioid antagonist, so that there might be other brands that would be available for this, and any technical amendments for substance, clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions?
I mean, what about that clause requiring DOH to establish education and training?
That will be making that program voluntary.
Okay.
Members, comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2253, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair, recommendations adopted.
Members, moving to our 8:30 a.m. agenda from this morning, we have House Bill 2629 relating to conveyance tax. Members, Chair's recommendation is to pass this out with an HG1. I'm going to, pursuant to the preamble that is here previously, we're going to up the amount from 2,000 to 2 million to 5 million, because that reflects the value in Los Angeles for which they've started to apply this higher rate. Throughout the preamble, we will make those corrections to those numbers, $5 million, changing it from 2 million to 5 million, and then we will calculate the monthly mortgage costs pursuant to that. We will similarly change in the text of the bill, the 2 million to 5 million. And we will change the distribution, members, from 10% to the Land Conservation Fund, 25% to the Rental House Revolving Fund, 25% to the Affordable Home Ownership Fund, and 10% to the Homeless Services Fund, to be 10% to the Land Conservation, 40% to RHRF, 10% to the Affordable Home Ownership, and 10% to the Homeless Services Fund. This is in response to the testimony from Catholic Charities of Hawaii. Any other, we're going to also include a defective date and technical amendments for style, clarity, and consistency. And then in the committee report, request that HHSDC to the next committee provide information about these definitions requested by DOTAX in their testimony, and a defective date. Members, comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2629, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes?
No vote.
No vote for Rep. Garcia. All others vote aye. Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Moving, members, to our 9:45 a.m. agenda, taking up House Bill 966, relating to access to treatment for terminally ill patients. Chair's recommendation is to pass with tech amendments and effective date of 3,000. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 966, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair, recommendations adopted.
Members, with respect to House Bill 2149, I think this one needs a little bit more work. Chair's recommendation is going to be to defer, and I will go back to the introducer to work on this measure further. Moving on to House Bill 1963, relating to healthcare and the CON process. Members, we had a good conversation. Chair's recommendation is going to be to move an HD1 with amendment striking out hospice homes and other hospice facilities and dialysis centers from the bill. And then on page 4, with respect to the language that strikes out or 10 beds, we're going to keep that number there, or keep that language back in, and then blank out the 10. Blank out the 10. HAH will be coming forward with more information with respect to these. Any technical amendments and a defective date of 3,000. Members, any comments, questions, or concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1963, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair recommendation is adopted.
Members, on House Bill 2775, Chair's recommendation is to do any tech amendments for consistency, clarity, and style, as well as insert a defective date of 3,000. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
What about the definition for complaints?
This
not
is
defined.
House Bill 2775, and this is with respect to the candor process.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2775.
Yeah, that's the next,
That's the next one.
Okay, members, any comments, questions, or concerns on House Bill 2775? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 2775, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair recommendation is adopted.
Members, on House Bill 2275 relating to home health agencies, a good conversation still needs a little bit more work on this one, so members, I'm going to defer this one. Members, on House Bill 1921, our last bill, again, another good bill. We're going to amend this, taking up the changes by Department of Health and adding to that section for homebound individuals and vulnerable populations. Adding that into the bill. Defective date of 3,000 and any technical amendments for consistency, clarity, and style.
Dollar amounts in committee report?
And thank you, and putting the amounts in the committee report and blanking out those amounts that are already blank. All right. Comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1921, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations or noes?
No vote.
No vote for Rep. Garcia. All others vote aye. Chair recommendation is adopted.
Members, that takes care of our agenda. Thank you very much. We will see you on Friday. Aloha, we are adjourned.
966.